Like most of the other demigods, Miquella goes by many titles. He is the Unalloyed, the Empyrean, Kindly Miquella, and Tender Miquella. Quite unlike other demigods though, Miquella does not appear to be corrupted, at least not too much. With Rykard's serpent consumption, Morgoth's omen curse, and even his sister's festering rot, eternal youth and the power to charm and compel doesn't sound like the worst possible outcome. In some ways, he might even seem harmless, weak. Throughout the main game, he's hinted to be the most benevolent of the demigods. He shows no desire for conquest or war. The Halic tree is a symbol of his kindness, an alternative to the Earth tree that's welcoming rather than oppressing. Those tortured and persecuted by the Golden Order can be found here, from the Misbegotten to the Albinorics. And at the very bottom lies his sister Melania, asleep and forever waiting for her brother to return. And yet, Miquella is also said to be the most terrifying, described as fearsome, wise, alluring, and deadly. He has had a lot of criticism leveled towards him, especially since the release of the DLC, but as much as I may agree to some extent, I still find him very, very fascinating. His writing is flawed and yet nearly as compelling as it was before we knew him better, before we killed the dream, both ours and his. And I thought I would talk about why. A very popular reading of the DLC is Miquella as a nascent butterfly. Nascency is the state of beginning, and that is most of what we see from Miquella, something set into motion but not guaranteed to be completed. The signs he leaves all over the game showcase this, his failed attempts at creating something in Castle Sol, the eclipse never appearing over the horizon. His beloved Halic tree is abandoned, slowly degrading and rotting away. His very sister slumbers at its roots, still afflicted by rot. And of course, when he finally does get close to achieving his goal, we step in and kill him. His very nature follows along with that, him being an eternal youth, a genius in mind and yet feeble in body. But this is a reading many have spoken of. Where did this incompleteness come from? What is he missing? Well, we see it in its most literal form in the DLC. The heart of Miquella's character is his self-sacrifice, and that is made very clear in the trail he leaves behind. As you find his crosses and the flowers blooming from his blood, you find messages that he leaves behind, wherein he sheds parts of himself piece by piece. It's representative not only of his self-purification, his shedding of his identity to become a god, but also an act of penance, a symbolic way of showing his dedication. How much he's willing to give up of himself rather than hurt others, drenched in this constant loathing of his lineage bearing the guilt of all his predecessors. Crosses appear with his sigil all across the realm of shadow. Crosses that his followers track and move after in one of my favorite conceptual FromSoft storylines. The Cerulean Coast is something of a divergence, a detour Miquella took on his journey. It doesn't seem to lead anywhere near to Ener Ilim, where he plans to ascend to godhood. In this coast is a pit. Within it is a cavern, an utterly massive one. You go deeper and deeper, and one of the most haunting moments in the entire game comes with one particular cross. Every other till this point has described an abandoned limb of some kind, some aspect of the body. But here you read the words, "I abandon here my love." How does an age of compassion work without true love? Is this what godhood requires? As you keep going, you fall down the deepest pit you've ever seen. You encounter a massive putrescence, the melted remains of a long-lost civilization, a night held together only by a cage of bones. And there, at the very bottom of the world, you find Saint Trina. Miquella went to the coast to abandon her, and she is one of the most beautiful designs I've ever seen. Head resting on her arms, forever sleeping. She may not be immediately recognizable as a human, her body sprouting like a flower, hair still growing out longer and longer like petals or leaves. Like a seed dropped somewhere and left to bloom out of control. And her being a flower feels perfectly fitting, something beautiful and gentle, and yet something temporary, something doomed to eventually wilt, even as Miquella seeks eternal bliss. By discarding this flower, much like his sister, Miquella loses something deeply important. The fact that a flower still holds beauty in spite of its impermanence. To even hear Saint Trina's words, you must die over and over. She asks that you kill Miquella, a proverbial request to die, knowing she will die with him. Godhood would be a prison, she says. A caged divinity is beyond saving. Trina is the side of Miquella that knows the truth, that can see past his savior complex. She is his love, not just of others but of himself, the part that sees him for what he is, understanding that his journey is making him lose himself. And he fulfills that prophecy by leaving her behind. And so she begs us to grant him forgiveness. Forgiveness for his own failures, for his constant sense of not doing enough that led to his extreme choices. Forgiveness for everything he did along the way, all the sacrifices and all the pain. This leads us to FromSoft's strangest narrative decision. That is, of course, this boss fight is like, well, I wrote plenty of colorful descriptions for what it was like. Smoking without the kick, Elden Ring without Morgoth, Dark Souls 3 without that Irrital screenshot. Soul of Cinder has proven that this sort of narrative move isn't fully out of character for FromSoft. They're not beyond what many would call fan service over their usual more vague, esoteric one-offs. And granted, there is a level of thematic weight to Radahn's presence. He is the only demigod we haven't gotten to fight in his strongest form. He represents that same refusal to let go, this desire to hold on to everything he has. Obsessed with the previous Elden Lord, one who wasn't even his true father. Holding on to his pathetic horse from his childhood even as it slowly dies and crumbles under his weight. Holding back the stars of fate that may set the course for the future. And you are that future. I spoke earlier of Miquella's self-sacrifice, which still rings true. But he does make several beyond himself, sacrifices he sees as necessary. Radahn is slain for him, Caelid is plagued and rot in his name. He brainwashes Mohg and uses his corpse as housing for his chosen consort. It's not directly killing him, but he quite evidently needed him dead at some point. And in spite of Mohg's existing blood-crazed mania, which I believe he always had, the nature of when Miquella charmed him was left vague for a reason. These actions are akin to that of the other demigods, manipulating, waging wars, wreaking havoc. While destruction Miquella causes is in his mind for a greater purpose, he cannot escape the same call to violence. Ansbach calls him a monster, and while that man's morals seem somewhat vague, the emotion in his voice and conviction it carries rings true. And there's the question as to the nature of the relationship between Miquella and Radahn, one that I frankly don't fully understand. I think you can view it in one way or another depending on how you view Miquella. I don't think it's meant to be a romantic thing, but it's easy to come to that conclusion. But it's interesting to me that Trina's protector was manifested as a horse rider, one especially weak to scarlet rot. It's not literally Radahn's body nor his horse, but it certainly echoes him, and I think it sheds some light on Miquella's perception of Radahn. I would like to think Miquella loved Radahn as naive, childish admiration, because on the surface he is a perfect consort when he appears. He is a divine lion in a way. Housed in a horned body, a lion of a warrior, a union between the old and the new. He has, on the surface, everything Godfrey has, the apparently perfect Elden Lord, one that would serve as a powerful protector. Miquella does not see what Ranni sees, the fact that some things must be left behind. Miquella simply wishes to embrace the whole of it. And so the fight is, in a way, a union of everything. Arcane with Mohg's body and Bloodflame, intelligence with his gravity magic, faith with Miquella's own holy beams of light, and, the strength and dexterity as he battles with his swords. The fight's soundtrack is an excellent demonstration of how the same melody can go from tragic in the Starscourge fight to triumphant in this rematch. And that triumph comes to a head in the second phase. And yet, there's something pretty off-putting about this design. Radahn doesn't really feel in line with Miquella's imagery and vision. He has all the makings of the strongest warrior in the world, but is that really what Miquella needs? There's a clash between the purple gravity magic and the golden light. The blood flame from the tip of his sword feels completely unnatural. His omen horns, rather than being out on display, are chained up and suppressed beneath his gauntlets. There's also the fact that he's here at all, the product of an unnatural resurrection. After the Great Festival to put him to rest, this becomes especially jarring. In attempting to mash all these elements together, it creates something that feels very wrong. And I'm quite certain that a lot of this was not intentional. Some of it is, but I think that this is a bad design, one plagued with inconsistencies while not being particularly striking. The themes I've mentioned feel both too overt and too subtle. I think he's too similar to Starscourge Radahn, and I think Miquella himself looks lacking, reduced from the main focus of the DLC, character and story, into a Serosh substitute to parallel Godfrey. And it can feel like the game wants to have its cake and eat it too, presenting Radahn as this triumphant badass final battle despite its inherent unnatural origin. But I can't deny that there's something there, regardless of how poorly it was communicated, regardless of how much I dislike this boss. These inconsistencies, as much as they may harm my perception of the DLC and this character, do serve some purpose. For as funny as Miquella's massive nuke is as he preaches of love, the irony on display certainly feels intentional. Miquella attempting to charm you and allowing Radahn to cut you in half after he fails is on purpose. This is not the gentle, loving demigod that we once heard of, at least not fully. Are Miquella's charms a form of kindness? The way his charm is written is interesting in that people are aware of it but serve him still, fully acknowledging they're being controlled and just going along with it. He charms Leda to prevent her from getting murderous, Hornsent to forget his vengeful rage, Ansbach simply to stop him from getting revenge for Moog, who he charmed to enter the Shadow Realm. Miquella's pilgrimage through the monuments of the Shadow Realm, these testaments to his mother's genocide and her suffering, feel like a quiet acknowledgement without a full understanding. His journey through the Shadow Keep, through the ruins of Ra, never speak of what occurred. Instead, these crosses seem to observe these places and simply move on. There is little nuance to be seen in his methods. It is, in a way, the opposite of his mother's path, one laid with destruction and trauma at every turn. And both methods lead to the downfall of their respective ideals. Marika's vengeful, destructive conquest leads to a shattered world, a barbaric oppression, the snake eating its own tail. Miquella's reliance on kindness and little else seems to lead to this near-pacifist mass brainwashing. This obsession with eternal control, charming everything in his way, a gentler path, to the same outcome. That obsession with kindness takes priority over all else, seeing everything as something to be pitied and gently cared for.
I promise you, 1,000-year voyage guided by compassion.
And I don't think it's a mere coincidence that Miquella, in the end, is always closing his eyes. He does not have one singular eye shut like those who have only partially transcended, like Melina, Rani, or even Moog. Miquella shuts both eyes, blind, willingly so, to the past and to his own actions. It shows the growing distance between his godhood and the ones beneath him, the ones he feels the need to control, stopping himself from seeing what's right in front of him. Miquella's self-sacrifice was what nurtured the Halig Tree, the biggest monument both to his kindness and his failures. It's what led many to believe in him, and why, in spite of the tree rotting and being left behind, all of its occupants continued to worship and pray for his return. Miquella was not necessarily loved for his promises of an eventual perfect world. He was loved for his kindness to those forgotten, to those mistreated. In being the protector of the misbegotten, of the Albinaurics, Miquella had put himself at their level, treating them with genuine love when no one else would. But the Halig Tree is abandoned now, its denizens are left to rot. Miquella cannot save everyone in this way simply by providing refuge and being a symbol of hope. And so he chooses to become a god, to make that kindness absolute, to prevent that suffering from ever coming forth. But in this pursuit of perfection, his self-sacrifice blinds him to the other losses along the way. Divesting himself of his humanity, he loses what made the persecuted love him in the first place. And so those in the Halic tree keep praying. They keep watching the skyline for someone who will not return, for someone unrecognizable from whom he was before. Millennia is no longer his dearest sister. Millennia is simply
my loyal blade.
In being a god, he loses the ability to see what his subjects see. Contrary to what some people say, I think the memory when you slay Miquella does reveal something. The memory shows everything Miquella was in the end. Not a malevolent, scheming manipulator, not a grand Machiavellian villain, but someone who refused to grow up, making a childish request. Someone with the genius to craft something like the unalloyed gold needle, an item that can remove the influence of an outer god, and yet someone with the naivety to believe he could save everything, accept everything, by forcing obedience. By making everyone just listen to him. He does not abandon all of his kindness, I don't think. He still embraces Radahn as he falls and dies without a word. He still allows you to live after charming you. Something yet remains behind those shut eyes, behind that mane of hair, but something feels missing from him. He expresses no compassion to his sister, not even calling her by name. And I think this makes it evident that Miquella has lost some capability to genuinely love. This compassion without love is almost sociopathic, him sticking with his end goal at any cost. With childlike ambition, Miquella travels to the realm of shadow, retracing his mother's footsteps, taking himself apart piece by piece, suffering so that no one else needs to. But if there's one thing that all of my deaths and failures and moments of anger and disquiet have caused me, it's that sometimes we have to. That suffering is what the lands between must go through in search of the new. We aren't exactly like America. Our path doesn't have to be paved entirely by vengeance. There are moments where we can be as capable of love and kindness as Miquella, but there's one difference. There are times where we let go. There are times where we must accept change, accept loss. There are aspects of this world we can reject and fight, and others we can nurture and accept, but Miquella doesn't want to let go of anything. Everything about him shows that. Miquella strives for compassion at any cost, losing himself piece by piece on his journey, despite the fact that the path to godhood will always be, quite literally, paved in corpses. Hi, this is a video similar to my Morgoth analysis I did a while ago. Neither that nor my super long in-depth Elden Ring critique thing did very well, but you know, I get it. Algorithm, and also I guess I should have picked a better title. I don't know. I want to thank Necrofriend and World Singer for both giving me lots of stuff and ideas to work with. Miquella is really interesting, but there is so much about him, so having people giving me their own thoughts and advice and feedback was actually really helpful. There were a lot of themes and things in this video that came from them, not me. I just added some like flowery words. I've mentioned it before, but World Singer has a great fanfiction series on AO3, sort of centered around Miquella going on right now, so if you liked this take on this character, you will probably like it a lot. I am recording this part of the outro on a different day because I also wanted to thank Echo Swirl for helping me get a few additional background cinematic shots for this video. I'm editing this overseas and I was missing a few like little bits, so thank you very much again, Echo, for getting a lot of the background footage. Alright, back to the past. If you liked this video, well, I hope you like Elden Ring because I do still want to talk about it in spite of the poor performance. That's right, I have another Elden Ring video planned. Jeez. For everything else, I have a couple of things lined up too. They just take a while and this semester's units are really content heavy, so I don't feel as if I have as much time to play games and record and form opinions and edit stuff, but I love doing this. I really love doing this, and I'm really grateful for like the fact that I can do this at all. I don't want to stop making stuff like it anytime soon, I think. I have a video lined up now on risk-taking in video games. I have a video on alien character designs. I have a third video coming on Ready or Not, and I want to make a Night Rain video. The Night Rain one probably gonna take a while, and I'm very tempted to just wait for the DLC to launch and see whether all of my complaints have been invalidated, but yeah, for now, thank you for watching. Subscribe if you want, I guess. Goodbye.